If you're listening to this, please, somebody call the humans, were the desperate words that echoed through the communication system of seasoned human space explorer Bruce Thomas's ship. The distress signal from the alien planet Ulia interrupted his routine mission, an urgent plea for assistance from Yaris, the Ulian leader, to combat a brutal alien invasion threatening his world. Bruce immediately reported the signal to Earth Command, advocating passionately to aid the besieged Ulians despite no prior contact with their race. After tense deliberation, Command agreed to dispatch Bruce and a small tactical team to assess and address the dire situation unfolding on Ulia. As Bruce's ship entered Ulia's atmosphere, they beheld a planet in utter chaos and devastation. The technologically advanced Ulian cities lay in smoldering ruins, razed by the ruthless invading aliens known as the Zorlax. Meeting with Yaris amidst the rubble, Bruce learned the peaceful Ulians stood no chance against the Zorlax's superior weaponry and unchecked aggression. Yaris recounted how the Zorlax sought to plunder Ulia's resources and enslave his people. He pleaded for humanity's aid, citing their legendary combat prowess as the Ulians' sole hope for survival against the onslaught. Bruce and his team soon witnessed the Zorlax's savagery firsthand. They engaged the aliens as they slaughtered helpless refugees, the humans' superior skills and tactics prevailing. But Bruce knew his small force was vastly outnumbered and outgunned. They needed reinforcements fast. Realizing this menace imperiled not just Ulia, but potentially Earth and beyond, Bruce captured footage of the Zorlak atrocities to transmit back home. He had to rally humanity to join the fight before it was too late. Meanwhile, Yaris struggled to rouse his pacifist people into a resistance, so Bruce's team began training Ulian volunteers in guerrilla warfare, grimly aware that without significant support, the Ulians faced enslavement and extinction. The planet's fate, and the future of the galaxy itself, now hinged on humanity answering the call to stand against an enemy that knew no mercy or limit. The Ulians' only hope echoed across the stars. "Please, somebody call the humans!" Bruce's heart raced as the crackling voice of the Earth Command officer echoed through his comm unit. "Reinforcements are on the way, Captain Thomas. ETA, 3 weeks. Godspeed." The transmission cut out, leaving Bruce with a surge of relief tempered by the daunting task ahead. He turned to Yaris, the Ulian leader's eyes filled with a mix of hope and trepidation. "We've got to hold out until they arrive," Bruce said, his voice steady despite the weight of the responsibility bearing down on him. "We need to build up the resistance, hit the Zorlax where it hurts, and keep your people alive." Yaris nodded, his fists tight. "We'll do whatever it takes." Over the next days, Bruce and Yaris worked tirelessly to establish a network of hidden bases scattered across Ulia's rugged terrain. They converted abandoned mines, deep caves, and dense forests into makeshift command centers, training grounds, and supply depots. Bruce's team taught the Ulian volunteers everything from basic firearms handling to advanced guerrilla tactics. Ambushes, sabotage, hit-and-run attacks. The resistance struck fast and hard, raiding Zorlak outposts under the cover of night. They stole weapons, ammunition, and equipment, leaving behind smoldering ruins and confused enemy troops. Each victory, however small, bolstered the Ulian spirits and swelled their ranks with new recruits eager to fight for their homeland. But the Zorlax were quick to retaliate. They sent out heavily armed patrols to hunt down resistance cells, torching villages and rounding up anyone suspected of aiding the humans. Bruce and his team watched helplessly as Ulian prisoners were marched through the streets, beaten and bloodied, before being shipped off to Zorlak labor camps. During one particularly daring raid on a Zorlak supply depot, Bruce's team found themselves outmaneuvered and outgunned. Plasma bolts crisscrossed the smoke-filled air as they fought desperately to escape the ambush. Bruce felt a searing pain rip through his leg and he stumbled, his vision blurring. His men dragged him to safety, laying down covering fire as they retreated into the dense jungle. Several of them sported injuries of their own, their armor scorched and blood-soaked. Back at the base, as medics tended to their wounds, Bruce and Yaris pored over intelligence reports and scout findings. The situation was grim. The Zorlaks were tightening their grip on the planet, and the resistance was losing ground. They needed a decisive victory, something to show the Ulians that the fight was just the beginning. Their eyes fell on a grainy surveillance image of the Zorlak Central Command Center, a fortified complex rising from the ashes of the Ulian capital. If they could strike at the heart of the occupation, it would deal a crippling blow to the enemy and buy them precious time until the Earth fleet arrived. Bruce assembled his best fighters, a mix of battle-hardened humans and fiercely determined Ulians. They spent days studying the command center's defenses, memorizing guard rotations and mapping out infiltration routes. As dusk fell, they moved out, silent shadows slipping through the rubble-strewn streets. Bruce led the way, his injured leg throbbing with each step, but he pushed the pain aside. They breached the complex's outer perimeter, neutralizing sentries with quick, precise strikes. Once inside, they split into teams, planting explosives at critical structural points. But as they converged on the extraction point, alarms blared to life. The Zorlak commander himself burst into the corridor, flanked by his elite guard. Bruce charged forward, engaging the commander in a brutal hand-to-hand battle. They traded blows, fists, and feet crashing against armor. Bruce felt his strength waning, his wounds taking their toll, but with a final, desperate lunge, he brought the commander down. His team half-carried, half-dragged him out of the complex as the timer on the explosives ticked down. They barely made it clear before the night sky erupted in a massive fireball, the shockwave knocking them off their feet. The Zorlak command center collapsed in on itself, burying the heart of the occupation under tons of rubble. As Bruce drifted in and out of consciousness, he heard Yaris's voice over the comm, urgent and pleading. "Hurry, please, we can't hold out much longer." The battle for Ulia raged on, but with the Zorlak leadership in disarray and human reinforcements on the way, a flicker of hope still burned amidst the darkness. Bruce's vision blurred as the Ulian medics rushed him into the base's makeshift hospital. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Yaris's worried face hovering over him. Hours later, a thunderous roar shook the base. Bruce's eyes snapped open to see chaos in the medical bay. Nurses scrambled to secure equipment as the walls trembled. "What's happening?" Bruce croaked, trying to sit up. A human doctor gently pushed him back down. "Easy, Captain. The cavalry's here." Outside, the sky lit up as massive ships descended through the atmosphere. The UES Indomitable, a behemoth of human engineering, led the fleet. Its weapon systems glowed with barely contained energy, ready to unleash hell on the Zorlak forces. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Zhang Lu studied the tactical display. "Status report," he barked. "Sir, we've established contact with the resistance leader Yaris," a comm officer replied. "Captain Thomas is in critical condition but alive. The Zorlaks still control most of the planet." Lu nodded grimly. "Deploy the Ghost Squad to reinforce the resistance base. Priority 1 is securing Captain Thomas and the medical facility." Within minutes, dropships screamed towards the surface. Captain Marcus Reeves led his team out the moment they touched down. The Ghost Squad moved with practiced precision, setting up defensive positions around the base perimeter. Reeves found Yaris coordinating the Ulian defenders. "We're here to help," he said, extending a hand. "Let's get this place locked down tight." As Reeves's team worked, the sky erupted with fire. The human fleet unleashed a devastating barrage on Zorlak positions. Supply depots vanished in pillars of flame. Weapons factories crumbled under pinpoint strikes. In the medical bay, Bruce fought through the haze of painkillers. He could hear the sounds of battle outside. A nurse tried to keep him in bed, but he waved her off. "I need to be out there," he growled, struggling to his feet. Before he could take a step, alarms blared throughout the base. Yaris burst into the room, his face grim. "The Zorlaks are coming. They're throwing everything they have at us." Outside, the horizon darkened with the approaching Zorlak army. Tanks rolled forward, crushing everything in their path. Swarms of troops advanced behind them. Captain Reeves's voice crackled over the comm. "All units, prepare for contact. This is what we trained for." The air filled with the scream of energy weapons as the two forces clashed. Ghost Squad snipers picked off Zorlak commanders while Ullian troops held the line. Reeves himself led a daring flanking maneuver, using advanced anti-tank weapons to blast Zorlak armor into scrap. In the midst of the chaos, Bruce stumbled out of the medical bay. He grabbed a weapon from a fallen Zorlak and joined the fray. His presence electrified the defenders. "Push them back!" Bruce roared, firing into the enemy ranks. He found himself fighting alongside Reeves as they spearheaded a charge towards the Zorlak command post. The two humans fought like demons possessed, their skills honed by years of combat. They breached the command center, engaging the Zorlak elite guard in brutal close-quarters combat. Bruce's wounds screamed in protest, but he fought on. With a final push, they cornered the Zorlak general. "Surrender!" Reeves growled, weapon trained on the alien leader. The general hissed in defeat, dropping his weapon. Outside, the Zorlak army began to falter as word of their leader's capture spread. As the dust settled, Admiral Liu's shuttle touched down. He surveyed the battered but victorious human and Ullian forces with pride. "Well done," he said, clasping Bruce's hand. "Now let's talk about the future." Admiral Liu gazed out at the sprawling construction sites from the bridge of the UES Indomitable. The massive ship hung in low orbit, a silent guardian over the battered world below. "Status report," Liu barked, turning to his XO. "Sir, the first wave of defensive satellites are online. Ground-based shield generators are at 60% capacity and rising." Liu nodded, his eyes fixed on the patchwork of light spreading across Ulia's night side. Human plasma torches and salvaged Zorlak terraformers worked in tandem, clearing rubble and raising new structures at a feverish pace. Down on the surface, Bruce Thomas limped through the mud of the training grounds, his legs still stiff from his injuries. A line of Ullian recruits stood at attention before him, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and purpose. "All right, listen up," Bruce called out. "I know you've never held a weapon before. I know the thought of fighting goes against everything you believe, but I've seen what the Zorlaks do to worlds they conquer. If we don't stand and fight, there won't be an Ulia left to protect." He gestured to Captain Reeves, who stepped forward with a crate of training rifles. "These are non-lethal, for now, but they have the same weight and feel as the real thing. You'll drill with these until your arms feel like they're going to fall off. Then we'll drill some more." As the recruits fumbled with their new weapons, Bruce caught Reeves' eye. The Ghost Squad leader gave a nearly imperceptible nod. These Ullians had potential, but there was so much work to be done. In the rebuilt capital, Yaris paced before the Ullian Council. "The humans have given us everything. Technology, protection, a chance to rebuild. Joining their alliance is the logical next step." An elder counselor rose, his voice quavering. "And what of our ways? Our culture? Will we become nothing more than another cog in their war machine?" The debate raged on, unaware of the storm gathering beyond their star system. Aboard the Indomitable, alarms blared. Liu rushed to the command center, where a holographic display showed a mass of red icons swarming at the edge of Ullian space. "Zorlak signatures," a sensor operator reported. "Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands." Liu's eyes sharp. "Send word to Earth Command. We need every ship we can get here now." Weeks passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Bruce pushed his Ullian trainees to their limits and beyond. Cities became fortresses, the skies filled with defensive platforms and minefields. Then came the mission. Bruce led a small team of humans and Ullians on a stealth infiltration of a Zorlak shipyard. They slipped past patrols, hacked into computer cores, and downloaded critical intelligence on Zorlak ship designs and weapon systems. But as they made their escape, plasma fire erupted around them. 2 Ullians fell, their bodies vaporized in an instant. Bruce felt a searing pain in his side as a bolt grazed him. "Go!" he shouted, returning fire as the rest of the team sprinted for their shuttle. A Zorlak warrior lunged at Bruce, mandibles snapping. He barely managed to roll away, the alien's claws raking across his back. Somehow, they made it back to the shuttle. As they broke atmosphere, Bruce looked down at the wound in his side, his vision swimming. Well, he muttered, that could have gone better. The intelligence they stole proved invaluable. Human and Ullian engineers worked around the clock to update their defenses. But would it be enough? The answer came all too soon. Liu stood on the Indomitable's bridge, watching as a tsunami of Zorlak ships dropped out of hyperspace. All hands, he said, his voice calm despite the fear gripping his heart. Battle stations. On the planet below, Bruce and Yaris shared a grim look as sirens wailed across the rebuilt cities of Ulia. The Zorlaks had returned, and the fate of two worlds hung in the balance. The bridge of the UES Indomitable hummed with tension as Admiral Zhang Lu surveyed the tactical display. A sea of red dots swarmed towards Ulia, each representing a Zorlak warship intent on destruction. All ships, assume defensive formation Delta, Liu ordered, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Prepare to engage on my mark. The human fleet moved with practiced precision, taking up a protective screen around Ulia. Energy shields flickered to life, casting a blue glow across the hulls of the ships. On the planet's surface, Bruce Thomas limped through the command center, his legs still not fully healed. Ulian technicians worked feverishly at their stations, monitoring the planet's defenses. Status report! Bruce barked, leaning over a holographic display of Ulia's major cities. A young Ulian officer looked up, her eyes wide. All planetary shield generators are online, sir. Defense grid is at full power. Bruce nodded, tapping his comm unit. Yaris, Ghost Squad in position? Affirmative, Yaris's voice crackled through. We're dug in around the capital. Let them come. The first Zorlak ships dropped out of warp, their angular hulls dripping with weapons. Without hesitation, the human fleet opened fire. Lances of energy sliced through space, slamming into the lead Zorlak vessels. Explosions blossomed in silence, the burning wreckage of several enemy capital ships drifting lifelessly. But the Zorlaks pressed on, undeterred by their losses. A swarm of fighters and boarding craft poured from their hangars, screaming towards the human lines. All ships, brace for impact, Liu shouted as the first wave of Zorlak fighters crashed against their shields. On Ulia, Bruce watched as the sky lit up with the flash of orbital combat. Then, a new threat appeared on his screens. Incoming dropships, he yelled. All batteries, open fire. The planet's defense grid roared to life. Turrets swiveled, tracking the incoming Zorlak landing craft. Streams of energy blasts and guided missiles erupted from the ground, tearing into the vulnerable transports. Dozens of enemy ships exploded mid-air, raining debris across the landscape. But some got through. Yaris and his troops crouched in their fortified positions as Zorlak dropships touched down, disgorging waves of alien warriors. Hold the line, Yaris shouted, hefting his rifle. For Ulia! The air filled with the screech of energy weapons as the two forces clashed. Ghost Squad snipers picked off Zorlak officers with surgical precision, while Ulian troops laid down suppressing fire. The aliens pressed forward, their mandibles clicking in fury. Captain Reeves led a flanking maneuver, catching a group of Zorlaks in a deadly crossfire. Push them back, he roared, his own weapon spitting death. For a moment it seemed the defenders might hold. Then, a new sound filled the air, the ominous whistle of orbital bombardment. All units, take cover! Bruce's voice boomed through the comm networks as the first Zorlak energy blasts slammed into the city shields. Buildings shook, streets cracked, and panic spread through the populace. Bruce sprinted through the corridors of the command center, shouting orders. Get those civilians to the shelters, he commanded, helping a fallen Ulian to her feet. Move! As the bombardment intensified, Bruce knew they needed a game changer. He turned to a grizzled human sergeant. Assemble a strike team. We're taking the fight to them. Minutes later, Bruce led a mixed squad of humans and Ulians onto a stealth shuttle. They rocketed into orbit, weaving through the chaos of the space battle towards one of the massive Zorlak capital ships. Remember, Bruce said as they approached their target. "We get in, upload the virus, and get out. Simple." They breached the Zorlak ship's hull, immediately encountering fierce resistance. Bruce ducked under a swipe from a Zorlak warrior, driving his combat knife into a weak spot in the alien's armor. The narrow corridors echoed with the sound of battle as they fought their way to the ship's central computer core. "Cover me," Bruce ordered, inserting a data spike into the alien console. Lines of code flashed across his visor as the virus took hold. Alarms blared throughout the Zorlak ship as its systems went haywire. Bruce and his team fought their way back to their shuttle, launching just as the massive vessel began to list. They watched from a safe distance as the infected Zorlak ship careened into one of its allies, both erupting in a spectacular explosion. Bruce allowed himself a grim smile. That'll even the odds a bit. But his satisfaction was short-lived. The comm crackled with Admiral Liu's voice, tight with strain. "We can't hold out much longer," Liu reported. "There's just too many of them." Bruce's mind raced. They needed a plan, and fast. As he stared at the tactical display, an idea began to form. "Admiral," he said, "what if we use their own ships against them?" The plan was audacious, bordering on insane. But as Bruce's team worked to override the controls of a crippled Zorlak vessel, he knew it was their only shot. "Now!" Bruce shouted as they finally gained control. The massive ship lurched forward on a collision course with the heart of the Zorlak fleet. The impact was beyond anything they could have imagined. A chain reaction tore through the Zorlak formation, ships exploding like firecrackers in a string. For a moment, silence fell across the battlefield. Then, miraculously, the remaining Zorlak ships began to retreat, jumping to warp in disarray. Bruce sagged against the shuttle's bulkhead, exhaustion finally catching up to him. They'd won the day, but at a terrible cost. As they descended back to Ulia's scarred surface, he knew the real battle was just beginning. Yaris met him as he stepped out of the shuttle, his armor scorched and dented. "We did it," the Ulian said, his voice filled with equal parts relief and disbelief. Bruce clasped his friend's shoulder, surveying the devastation around them. Fire still burned in the distance, and the cries of the wounded filled the air. "For now," Bruce replied, his eyes fixed on the sky where the Zorlaks had vanished. "But they'll be back, and next time they'll be ready for us." Yaris nodded, his expression hardening with willpower. "Then we'll be ready for them." As the adrenaline of battle faded, Bruce felt the weight of command settle back onto his shoulders. They had a brief respite, a chance to lick their wounds and prepare. But the war for Ulia, and perhaps the fate of the stars, had only just begun. The acrid smell of smoke and ozone filled the air as Bruce Thomas limped into the Ulian council chambers. His uniform was torn and stained with blood, some his, some alien. Admiral Zhang Liu stood at attention, his face a mask of exhaustion and worry. Yaris paced before the assembled council members, his normally smooth movements now jerky with stress. "The Zorlaks have withdrawn, but our long-range sensors show significant activity in their territory. They're regrouping." Bruce stepped forward, ignoring the twinge in his leg. "We can't wait for them to come back at full strength. We need to hit them now while they're vulnerable." An elderly counselor rose, his voice quavering. "But our defenses are in shambles. How can we possibly launch an offensive?" Admiral Liu's voice cut through the rising murmurs. "Because if we don't, the next Zorlak assault will overwhelm us completely." For hours, they debated strategy. Voices rose and fell as plans were proposed and discarded. Bruce's fingers danced across a holographic display, outlining potential targets deep in Zorlak space. "Here," he said, zooming in on a distant star system, "their primary shipyard. We take that out, we cripple their ability to replace their losses." Yaris leaned in, studying the display. "The risk is enormous. If we fail..." "We die," Bruce finished flatly. "But if we do nothing, we die anyway." In the end, exhaustion and desperation won out over caution. Yaris nodded his assent, his eyes hard. "Very well. We'll need our best for this." Within hours, the strike force assembled. The UES Indomitable hung in orbit, surrounded by a small fleet of sleek Ulian vessels. On the flight deck, Bruce watched as Captain Reeves put the Ghost Squad through final equipment checks. A towering Ulian in elaborate battle armor approached, introducing himself as General Karil. "My troops are ready," he said, his mandibles clicking with nervous energy. "We will not fail you." Bruce clasped the alien's forearm. "Together, we'll give the Zorlaks a beating they won't forget." The journey to the Zorlak shipyard was tense, punctuated by false alarms and whispered strategy sessions. As they dropped out of warp, the massive facility loomed before them, a twisted amalgamation of metal and biotech that hurt the eyes to look at. "All units, prepare for orbital drop," Bruce's voice crackled through the comm. He strapped himself into a one-man drop pod, trying to ignore the burning pain in his side. The pod shuddered as it launched, plummeting through the shipyard's defensive fire. Bruce gritted his teeth as G-forces slammed him back into his seat. With a bone-jarring impact, the pod crashed onto the shipyard's outer hull. Bruce kicked open the hatch, plasma rifle at the ready. All around him, human and Ulian troops poured from their landing craft. The air filled with the screech of energy weapons as Zorlak defenders swarmed to meet them. "Push forward!" Bruce shouted, ducking under a blast that left a smoking crater where his head had been. He returned fire, dropping 2 Zorlaks in quick succession. They fought their way through twisting corridors, the walls pulsing with an unsettling organic rhythm. Bruce's team finally reached a massive blast door protecting the central hub. "Cover me," he ordered, pulling out a compact hacking device. His fingers flew over the controls as Zorlak reinforcements poured in from side passages. The door slid open with a hiss. Bruce tossed in a flashbang grenade, then charged in behind it. In the chaotic seconds that followed, his team secured the room. Bruce jacked his device into the alien computer core. Lines of code scrolled across his visor as the virus uploaded. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. "It's working!" he shouted. "The automated defenses are turning on the Zorlaks." Through the hub's viewports, Bruce watched as robotic sentries and defense turrets opened fire on their former masters. Half-finished Zorlak ships tore free from their moorings, colliding with each other in a spectacular light show of destruction. "Admiral," Bruce called into his comm, "we've softened them up. Time to bring the hammer down." The Indomitable's main guns opened up, lances of energy slicing through the crippled shipyard. Massive explosions bloomed in the vacuum of space as the facility tore itself apart. Bruce's team fought their way back to their extraction point, linking up with Captain Reeves and General Carroll's battered forces. As they rocketed away from the dying shipyard, Bruce allowed himself a grim smile. "One target down, 1 to go." The acrid smell of burning metal and ozone filled Bruce's nostrils as he strode into the Ulian war room. Yaris paced back and forth, his mandibles clicking with nervous energy. Admiral Liu stood motionless, his eyes fixed on a holographic display of Ulia's orbital defenses. "We've got a problem," Yaris said, his voice tight. He tapped a command, and the display shifted to show a new image, a heavily armored Zorlak warrior, its carapace gleaming with bioluminescent markings. "Our spies just sent this. The Zorlaks are recalling their elite Scythe warriors." Bruce leaned in, studying the image. "How bad are we talking?" "Bad," Liu replied, his voice grim. "These aren't just soldiers. They're living weapons, bred for one purpose: to kill." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Bruce's mind raced, calculating odds and strategies. "We need to fortify, now." Within hours, the cities of Ulia buzzed with frantic activity. Human engineers worked alongside Ulian laborers, erecting massive energy shield generators. Bruce watched as a shimmering dome flickered to life over the capital, its surface rippling like water. In a nearby training ground, Captain Reeves barked orders at a mixed squad of humans and Ulians. "Move as one," he shouted as they practiced anti-scythe maneuvers. "These bastards are strong, but they're not invincible. Teamwork is the key." A distant explosion rocked the ground. Bruce's comm crackled to life with General Karill's voice. "Thomas, We've done it. The Zorlak cloning facility is destroyed. Bruce allowed himself a small smile, but it faded as Carol continued. We lost good soldiers today. This victory, it came at a heavy price. Before Bruce could respond, alarms blared throughout the city. Liu's voice cut through the chaos. They're here. Zorlak fleet detected on approach. All hands to battle stations. The sky above Ulia erupted in fire as the Zorlak ships opened up with a devastating barrage. Buildings shook and civilians screamed as they ran for the shelters. Bruce sprinted to the command center, dodging falling debris. Shields holding at 80%, an Ulian technician reported. But they won't last forever under this assault. Bruce grabbed a comm unit. Ghost Squad, form up. We're taking the fight to them. Minutes later, Bruce and his team drifted in 0G outside the Zorlak flagship's airlock. With practiced precision, they cut through the hull and slipped inside. The corridors of the alien ship pulsed with an eerie organic light. Bruce led the way, his rifle sweeping back and forth. They encountered resistance, Zorlak guards who fell to silent headshots from Ghost Squad's suppressed weapons. They reached the main computer core, and Bruce jacked in his hacking device. Lines of code scrolled across his HUD as the virus took hold. Suddenly, the ship's guns fell silent. We did it, Bruce breathed. Lou, now's your chance. The human Ulian fleet surged forward, their weapons tearing into the suddenly vulnerable Zorlak ships. But the enemy's numbers were overwhelming, and Bruce watched in horror as Allied ships winked out of existence one by one. On the planet's surface, the first Scythe drop pods slammed into the outskirts of the city. Yaris and General Carroll rallied their troops, but the Scythes tore through their lines with terrifying efficiency. Bruce's mind raced as he watched the battle unfold on tactical displays. We can't beat them head-on, he muttered. Then an idea struck. Yaris, fall back to the city center. We'll make them come to us. The plan worked. The Scythes pursued the retreating defenders into the narrow streets and bombed out buildings of the Ulian capital. There, Ghost Squad and their allies were waiting. Captain Reeves's voice crackled over the comm. Trap sprung in Sector 7. A dozen Scythes down. Similar reports flooded in from across the city as the invaders found themselves caught in kill boxes and ambushes. But the Scythes fought on, their inhuman strength and speed making each victory costly. Bruce found himself face-to-face with the Scythe Prime, a towering monster of chitin and muscle. The alien's claws lashed out, raking across Bruce's chest plate. He stumbled back, bringing his rifle up, but the Scythe Prime batted it aside. They grappled in the ruins of an Ulian temple, trading vicious blows. Bruce's ribs cracked under a thunderous punch, but he pushed through the pain. He saw an opening and struck, driving his combat knife deep into a weak point in the Scythe's armor. The Prime let out an otherworldly screech and collapsed. Bruce stood over its twitching form, chest heaving. This ends now, he growled, and brought his boot down on the alien's head. With their leader fallen, the Scythe's seemingly unbreakable will finally cracked. Admiral Liu seized the moment, concentrating the fleet's remaining firepower on the Zorlak ships. They're trying to jump to warp, Liu's voice rang out. But thanks to Bruce's earlier sabotage, the Zorlak flagship's drives failed to engage. Trapped and outgunned, the invaders had no choice but to retreat. Bruce watched from a crumbling balcony as the last Zorlak ships vanished into the upper atmosphere. Yaris limped up beside him, his armor scorched and dented. We did it, the Ulian said, his voice filled with exhaustion and disbelief. Bruce nodded, his eyes scanning the devastation below. Fires still burned throughout the city, and the cries of the wounded filled the air. For now, he replied. But this war isn't over. Not by a long shot. Yaris chittered in agreement. Then we'll be ready for whatever comes next. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Bruce felt the weight of command settle back onto his shoulders. They had won a crucial victory, but at a terrible cost. The real work, rebuilding, healing, and preparing for the next Zorlak assault, was just beginning. As the dust settled from their victory against the Zorlaks, Bruce Thomas stood atop a crumbling Ulian skyscraper, surveying the devastation below. The acrid smell of burned metal and alien flesh still hung in the air. He tapped his comm unit. Captain Reeves, report. Sir, Ghost Squad is setting up the first early warning array on the southern continent. We should have planetary coverage within 72 hours. Bruce nodded, though Reeves couldn't see it. Good. Keep me updated. He made his way down to street level, where General Kirill was drilling a mixed unit of humans and Ulians on the operation of a new plasma cannon. The massive weapon hummed with barely contained energy. Again! Carol barked. Faster this time! The Zorlax won't give you time to double-check your calibrations. Bruce approached as the drill concluded. How's it going, General? Kirill's mandibles clicked in frustration. Progress is slow but steady. My troops are adapting to the new tech, but it's challenging. We'll get there, Bruce assured him. We have to. A distant rumble drew their attention skyward. Through gaps in the clouds, they watched as massive sections of a space station took shape in low orbit. Admiral Liu's voice crackled over the comm. Thomas, Carol, get up here. You need to see this. Hours later, Bruce stood on the observation deck of the newly christened Bastion Station. The curved viewports offered a breathtaking view of Ulia below. Liu gestured to a holographic display. We've got full coverage of the system now. Nothing's getting through without us knowing about it. Bruce studied the readouts, impressed by the station's firepower. A throat-clearing sound made him turn. Yaris stood in the doorway, his expression grim. We have a problem, the Ulian counselor said. In the war room, Bruce and the others crowded around a data terminal. Yaris tapped a series of commands, bringing up grainy footage of a massive Zorlak shipyard. Our spies took this at great risk, Yaris explained. The Zorlaks are building something monstrous. The footage showed a colossal weapon taking shape, easily the size of a small moon. Bruce's blood ran cold as he realized its purpose. A planet killer, he breathed. Admiral Liu's face hardened. We can't let them finish it. Bruce's mind raced, formulating a plan. We hit them now before it's operational. A small team in and out. Liu nodded. I'll prep a stealth corvette. Who do you need? Reeves, Carol, and their best. We'll board that thing and blow it to hell. Days later, Bruce crouched in the cramped confines of a stealth insertion pod. The corvette had slipped past the Zorlak's outer defenses, and now they were making their final approach. 30 seconds to contact. The pilot's voice crackled over the comm. Bruce checked his weapon one last time. Beside him, Reeves and Carol did the same. The pod shuddered as it detached from the corvette. They slammed into the partially constructed planet killer with bone-jarring force. Bruce kicked open the hatch and surged out, plasma rifle at the ready. The corridors of the massive weapon pulsed with an eerie, organic light. Bruce led the way, his team moving with practiced precision. They encountered the first Zorlak security team at a junction. Bruce ducked as alien energy weapons sizzled overhead. He returned fire, dropping 2 Zorlaks in quick succession. Reeves tossed a grenade and the hallway erupted in fire and shrieking alien death cries. They fought their way deeper into the weapon's core, planting explosive charges at key junctions. The resistance grew fiercer with each level they descended. In a cavernous chamber housing the main reactor, they faced their toughest challenge. A dozen Zorlak elite guards swarmed them from multiple entry points. Bruce dove behind a console as plasma bolts melted the deck plates around him. He popped up, squeezing off short bursts that dropped 2 more Zorlaks. Kirill, he shouted, the charges! The Ulian general sprinted for the reactor, dodging fire as he went. He slapped the final explosive onto the pulsing energy core. It's done, Carol yelled. Fall back, Bruce ordered. They fought their way back to the extraction point, leaving a trail of Zorlak corpses in their wake. As they blasted off in their stealth ship, Bruce watched the planet killer recede through the view screen. A blinding flash lit up space as the charges detonated. The massive weapon tore itself apart, taking a chunk of the shipyard with it. Bruce allowed himself a grim smile. but it faded as he saw the cost. Several of their ships hadn't made it out. Back on Ulia, a subdued ceremony honored their victory. Bruce stood before the Ulian Council, his uniform still stained with alien blood. Yaris stepped forward. In light of recent events, we formally request to join the United Earth Alliance. Bruce nodded solemnly. I'll take your request to Earth, but make no mistake, the Zorlax will be back and they'll be pissed. He gazed out at the assembled crowd of humans and Ulians. We've bought ourselves some time, but the real fight is just beginning. We need to be ready. As the council chamber erupted in worried murmurs, Bruce's mind was already racing, planning their next move. The fate of... As the dust settled from their victory against the Zorlax, Bruce Thomas stood before the Ulian Council, his face grim and resolute. Yaris stepped forward, holding a data pad containing the treaty that would change the course of their war. We, the people of Ulia, hereby pledge our allegiance to the United Earth Alliance, Yaris declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. He pressed his hand against the biometric scanner, finalizing the agreement. Bruce nodded, feeling the weight of this moment. With our combined strength, we stand a better chance against what's coming. The council chamber erupted in a mix of worried murmurs and determined voices. Bruce's comm unit buzzed, and Admiral Liu's face appeared on the small screen. Thomas, get to the spaceport. You need to see this. Hours later, Bruce stood on the observation deck of Bastion Station, watching as a vast armada of human warships dropped out of hyperspace. The fleet stretched as far as the eye could see, a testament to humanity's industrial might. Among the new arrivals, one ship caught Bruce's attention, a sleek, dark vessel that seemed to absorb the light around it, the UES Nighthawk. As Bruce made his way to the docking bay, he spotted a familiar face. Captain Jackson Hartley strode towards him, a grin breaking through his usually stern demeanor. Bruce, you old bastard, Hartley called out, clasping Bruce's hand in a firm shake. Heard you've been raising hell out here. Bruce allowed himself a small smile. Good to see you, Jack. We're going to need every ship and soldier we can get. Their reunion was cut short by the blaring of alarms. Both men sprinted to the command center, where Admiral Liu stood before a holographic display of the Ulian system. We've detected a new Zorlak bioweapon, Liu explained, her face tight with concern. They're calling it the Scourge. It can wipe out entire populations in days. Bruce studied the data scrolling across the screen, his mind racing. We need to hit them first. Take out their production facility before they can deploy it. Hartley nodded in agreement. The Nighthawk can get us in close. We'll need a small team, in and out before they know we're there. Days later, Bruce found himself crouched in the cargo hold of a stealth shuttle, surrounded by a joint team of human and Ulian special forces. The Nighthawk had slipped them past the Zorlak's outer defenses, bringing them to the edge of the production facility's sensor range. 60 seconds to insertion, the pilot's voice crackled over the comm. Bruce checked his gear one last time, making eye contact with each member of his team. No words were needed. They all understood the stakes. The shuttle touched down silently on the facility's outer hull. Bruce led the way, cutting through the metal with a plasma torch. They slipped inside, moving through dark corridors that pulsed with an alien organic light. At the first junction, they encountered a Zorlak patrol. Bruce raised his hand, signaling the team to hold position. As the aliens passed, Hartley struck. His vibroblade sliced through the Zorlak's carapace, dropping it before it could raise an alarm. They pushed deeper into the facility, planting explosives at key junctions. In the main laboratory, Bruce's breath caught in his throat. Massive vats lined the walls, filled with a swirling, sickly green substance. "This is it," he whispered. "The Scourge." Hartley moved to a nearby console, inserting a data spike. "Uploading the schematics now. We'll have everything we need to develop a countermeasure." Suddenly alarms blared throughout the facility. Bruce cursed under his breath. "Our exit's compromised. We need a new plan." Zorlak reinforcements poured into the lab, their energy weapons scorching the air around them. Bruce's team took cover, returning fire with precision. The power core, Bruce shouted over the din of battle. If we overload it, the EMP should knock out their systems. Hartley nodded, already moving. Cover me. Bruce laid down suppressing fire as Hartley sprinted to the core controls. The captain's fingers flew over the alien interface, bypassing security protocols. It's done, Hartley yelled. We've got 2 minutes before this place goes up. They fought their way back to the extraction point, the wounded supported by their comrades. As they piled into the shuttle, Bruce felt the facility shudder beneath them. The EMP wave washed over them as they blasted away from the doomed structure. Through the view screen, Bruce watched Zorlak ships drift powerless in space. Hours later, back on Ulia, Bruce stood in a makeshift laboratory. Human and Ulian scientists pored over the stolen data, working feverishly to unlock its secrets. Admiral Liu entered, her face drawn with exhaustion. We've detected a massive Zorlak fleet on approach. They're not wasting any time with their counterattack. Bruce's teeth gritted. Then neither will we. As they moved to the war room, Bruce caught sight of Hartley conferring with his crew. Their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The shockwave from the scourge of Oblivion's destruction tore across Ulia's surface, shattering buildings and kicking up massive dust clouds. Admiral Liu stood frozen on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching in horror as the planet below convulsed. Sir, we're receiving distress calls from all over the planet, a communications officer reported, her voice tight with barely contained panic. Liu's hands gripped the command console, fingers tightening. Put them through. The bridge speakers crackled to life, filling the air with a cacophony of terrified voices. This is Ulian Outpost Gamma 7. We're under attack. Bioweapon released in the capital. Thousands dead. Need immediate evacuation. Please respond. Liu closed his eyes, the weight of command crushing down on him. When he opened them again, his gaze fell on the tactical display. Red dots representing Zorlak ships swarmed around Ulia like angry insects. A flashing icon caught his attention. What's that? He demanded, pointing at the screen. The tactical officer leaned in, eyes widening. It's a friendly IFF, sir. One of ours. Liu's heart leapt. Magnify! The image zoomed in, revealing a battered fighter tumbling through the debris field. Its hull was scorched and pitted, one wing nearly sheared off. It's Thomas, Liu breathed. Get a rescue team out there now. On the planet's surface, Bruce Thomas fought to keep consciousness as his fighter plummeted through Ulia's atmosphere. Warning klaxons blared, the cockpit filling with acrid smoke. He yanked on the controls, desperately trying to level out. The ground rushed up to meet him, a patchwork of burning cities and devastated landscapes. Bruce gritted his teeth. Come on, you piece of junk, he growled. Just a little more. The fighter slammed into the ground, skidding across broken concrete and twisted metal. It came to a shuddering stop at the edge of what had once been the Ulian capital. Bruce's head lolled forward, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. The last thing he saw before blackness took him was a group of figures in environmental suits rushing towards his craft. He awoke to the sharp smell of antiseptic and the steady beep of medical equipment. Bruce's eyes fluttered open, taking in the makeshift field hospital around him. Ulian and human medical staff rushed between rows of beds, tending to the wounded. Welcome back to the land of the living, a familiar voice said. Bruce turned his head, wincing at the pain. Yaris stood beside his bed, the Ulian's normally pristine robes stained with dirt and blood. What? Bruce croaked, his throat dry. What happened? Yaris's expression darkened. We won, if you can call it that. The Zorlak dreadnought is destroyed, but... He trailed off, gesturing to a nearby window. Bruce struggled to sit up, ignoring the protests of his battered body. Through the window, he saw a landscape of utter devastation. The once gleaming towers of the Ulian capital lay in ruins, smoke rising from countless fires. How bad? Bruce asked, dreading the answer. Yaris's mandibles clicked in distress. Bad. The Zorlaks deployed the scourge before we could stop them. Entire cities, millions of my people. Bruce's fists clenched, grief and rage warring within him. And the Zorlax? Still out there, Yaris replied. We hurt them, but they vastly outnumber us. Admiral Liu is evacuating as many as he can, but... A commotion at the hospital entrance drew their attention. Admiral Liu strode in, his uniform disheveled, face haggard. Thomas, Liu said, approaching Bruce's bed. Good to see you're still with us. We need to talk. Bruce listened as Liu laid out the grim situation. The Zorlak invasion force still posed an overwhelming threat, and the Scourge bioweapon was spreading rapidly across Ulia's surface. I'm ordering a full evacuation, Liu concluded. We can't hold this planet. We need to get as many people off-world as we can. Bruce shook his head, ignoring the pain that lanced through him. No, we can't abandon Ulia. Liu's expression hardened. This isn't up for debate, Thomas. It's the only way to save. We have the Scourge data, Bruce interrupted. If we can develop a countermeasure, we might be able to stop its spread, buy us time to fight back. Yaris stepped forward, hope kindling in his eyes. It's possible. Our scientists have been analyzing the data you retrieved. With more time... Liu looked between them, conflict evident on his face. Finally, he sighed. All right, but I'm still evacuating all non-essential personnel. You'll have limited resources. Bruce nodded, already formulating a plan. We'll make it work, we have to. As Liu left to coordinate the evacuation, Bruce turned to Yaris. We need to set up clinics, distribute the countermeasure as fast as we can. Yaris nodded, his mandibles set in a determined expression. I'll rally what's left of our military. We'll buy you the time you need. Bruce swung his legs off the bed, ignoring the protests of his battered body. There was work to be done, and the fate of Ulia hung in the balance.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.